Dreamgirls took 25 years and 2 dead deals to reach a movie screen, and almost nobody knows how close it came to never existing at all. By the end of this video, you'll know 15 facts that expose the real drama behind the drama, the brutal auditions, the extreme diets, the awards, season sabotage, and a feud that never made headlines. And there's one jaw-dropping bonus at the end about the real woman behind Effie that will change how you watch this movie forever. So speed up with me because the list starts now. 1. 783 auditions. For Effie, Bill Condon needed one actress who could carry the emotional weight of an entire movie, and finding her nearly broke the production before it even started. Condon and his casting team spent 6 months hunting for Effie White, screen testing 783 singing actresses before they landed on an answer. Fantasia Barrino, fresh off her American Idol win, was an early frontrunner. Disney star Raven-Symoné came in to read. Broadway veterans Capathia Jenkins and Patina Miller auditioned as well, and community theater actress Yvette Nicole Brown was in the mix before being redirected to a smaller role entirely. Jennifer Hudson wasn't in that first wave of buzzy names. She had to audition multiple times before Condon finally chose her, and even then he later admitted he wasn't fully confident in the decision. In his own words, he simply didn't believe any of the other actresses in the part. It took until audition number 784 for something to click. That kind of last-minute gamble almost never gets mentioned in the press tour because it makes the whole search look far less certain than the finished film suggests. Compare that to most studio productions, where a lead is usually locked months before a single camera rolls, and it becomes clear just how unusually chaotic this particular casting process really was for a film of this scale. The role that would define Jennifer Hudson's entire career came within one audition of going to someone else. 2 stars said no to Curtis Taylor Jr. was the most powerful role in the film, and 2 of the biggest names in Hollywood turned it down before it ever reached the actor audiences remember. Jamie Foxx was the first choice. Coming off his 2004 Best Actor Oscar win for Ray, he passed because DreamWorks couldn't meet the salary he was asking for. The part then went to Denzel Washington, who said no for a completely different reason. The role required real vocal performance woven into the drama, and Washington didn't sing. Producers moved on to Will Smith and Terrence Howard before circling back to Foxx a second time. Only after Beyoncé and Eddie Murphy were already attached did Foxx reconsider and finally accept. It's easy to forget how close a completely different actor came to playing one of the most memorable villains in modern musical film, all because of a number on a contract and a skill nobody thought to double-check beforehand. Washington's refusal in particular says a lot about how seriously the production treated the singing requirement, refusing to fake or dub around it even for an A-list name. The Curtis Taylor everyone remembers was, in reality, the 3rd name down on a very short list. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. 3. Beyoncé's 2-week crash diet. The Deena Jones audiences see at the end of Dreamgirls is not the same Deena from the beginning, and that transformation was far more literal than most viewers realize. The script required Beyoncé to play Deena at 16 and again at 36, with both age ranges filmed only 2 weeks apart. Instead of relying on makeup or wardrobe tricks like most productions would, Beyoncé decided to physically transform her own body. She followed the Master Cleanse, a diet of just lemon juice, maple syrup, cayenne pepper, and water, consumed up to 12 times a day with no solid food at all. In that 2-week window, she lost 20 pounds. The moment shooting wrapped, she went back to eating normally and gained most of it back almost immediately. She later said publicly that she would never recommend the diet to anyone unless they were doing it for a film role and under proper supervision, which says a lot about how far actors are sometimes pushed for a handful of seconds on screen that audiences barely register consciously. It's a far more extreme version of a common Hollywood pattern, where physical transformation is treated as proof of commitment, even when the health cost is real and lasting only a matter of days. It's the kind of behind-the-scenes sacrifice that never shows up in a trailer, but it's written all over the finished performance. 4. The idol rivalry nobody remembers. 2 years before Dreamgirls started casting, Jennifer Hudson and Fantasia Barrino were competing against each other every single week on the same television stage. In 2004, Hudson placed 7th on American Idol's 3rd season, while Fantasia won the whole thing, walking away with the recording contract, the tour, and the title. Hudson left the show without an agent or manager, taking whatever singing work she could find, including a stint performing on a Disney cruise ship. When Dreamgirls casting opened the following year, both women auditioned for Effie White. Fantasia, still riding her Idol win, was the early favorite. Hudson had to audition multiple times before Condon chose her instead. Fantasia reportedly called Hudson afterward and joked that she'd stolen her part. It was a friendly call on the surface, but it marked the moment that decided the rest of both of their careers in almost opposite directions. Two women who once competed for the exact same prize on live television ended up trading places entirely, just on a different stage a couple of years later. The Idol winner lost the role. The Idol runner-up won an Oscar for it. 5. Condon made her live the role. Effie White is demanding, hot-tempered, and impossible to control, and Jennifer Hudson in real life was none of those things. So Bill Condon decided to change that himself. After the main rehearsal period ended just before Christmas in 2005, Condon called Hudson back for a separate week of private one-on-one work. It wasn't about line readings. He instructed her to deliberately be rude to people on and off set, and to show up late on purpose, so she would live inside Effie's personality so completely that she wouldn't have to act it anymore. Hudson followed the direction. By the time principal photography began on January 6, 2006, she wasn't simply playing Effie in front of a camera. She'd absorbed the character's temperament into her daily behavior for an entire week beforehand. It's an unconventional and slightly uncomfortable method, deliberately eroding a performer's usual manners to access something raw, but very few directors would admit to using it so directly. Most method techniques are associated with veteran performers, which made it even more unusual to apply to someone making her feature film debut. That unusual choice produced the debut performance that won her an Academy Award. 6. One song, 4 days of filming. The most important scene in the entire film almost broke the shooting schedule, and it happened to be the one number every single person in the theater was waiting for. And I Am Telling You I'm Not Going had been the showstopper of the original 1981 Broadway production, and Condon scheduled it for the very last day of filming, so Hudson would have the maximum amount of time to grow into the character first. 1 day of shooting wasn't enough. Hudson's voice would give out after roughly 4 hours of takes, and a hoarse Hudson couldn't convincingly lip-sync to the studio recording. Condon had to request additional time and additional budget just to finish a single scene. Shooting on it finally wrapped 4 days later, in the early hours of April 8, 2006. For comparison, most musical numbers in a film schedule get a single day, maybe a day and a half, if the choreography is complex. This one quadrupled that, purely because of vocal stamina, turning what should have been a routine shoot day into an unplanned scramble for extra crew hours and studio approval mid-production. The single most important scene in the movie ended up costing 4 times what it was budgeted for. 7. Whitney Houston killed the first attempt. Long before Bill Condon ever touched this script, an entirely different version of Dreamgirls collapsed, and Whitney Houston was the reason why. In the late 1980s, David Geffen, who held the film rights, began developing a version built around Houston as Deena, working with Howard Ashman, the lyricist who would soon help define an entire generation of Disney animation. Houston wanted the script rewritten so that Deena would take over several of Effie's songs, including the anchor number, and I Am Telling You I'm Not Going. That single song had been the structural backbone of the entire second act since 1981. Reassigning it to a different character would have collapsed the show's architecture completely. Geffen refused. Negotiations stalled, and Ashman died of AIDS-related complications in 1991. Without a writer, a workable script, or a star still attached, the entire project simply fell apart. It's a reminder that even a major star's attachment can't save a project once the creative core of the material is compromised beyond repair. One creative demand over one song ended an entire film adaptation before a single frame was shot. 8. Norbit destroyed an Oscar campaign. For most of the 2007 award season, Eddie Murphy was the clear front-runner to win an Oscar, and then his own comedy quietly wrecked the entire campaign. After Dreamgirls opened in December 2006, Murphy's performance as James Thunder Early earned the kind of reception most actors chase for an entire career. He won the Golden Globe on January 15, 2007, beating Jack Nicholson, Brad Pitt, and Mark Wahlberg. He won the Critics' Choice Award 5 days later, then the Screen Actors Guild Award on January 28th. The Oscar nomination followed on January 23rd. The category looked essentially decided. Then, on February 9, 2007, Norbit opened in theaters, with Murphy playing multiple roles, including a fat suit performance as the overbearing wife, Rasputia. Critics called it racially insensitive, fat-shaming, and offensively unfunny, and it scored just 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. By the ceremony on February 25th, the industry conversation around Murphy had shifted entirely, and Alan Arkin won Best Supporting Actor instead for Little Miss Sunshine. It remains one of the clearest examples in modern Oscar history of a single, unrelated release derailing a campaign that had looked mathematically locked just weeks earlier. The phrase, "the Norbit effect," entered Hollywood vocabulary as shorthand for sabotaging your own awards run. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. 9. 20 dresses built from scratch. The entire visual identity of Dreamgirls was built almost single-handedly by one costume designer, and the scale of what she took on is bigger than most viewers assume. Costume designer Sharon Davis had to dress a story spanning roughly 13 years, moving through multiple eras of music, following 3 women whose look evolves from amateur talent show contestants to international stars. To cover that span, Davis designed and built 120 dresses for the principal cast alone, plus dozens of suits for the male leads. Her inspiration didn't come only from Motown reference points. She pulled from Cher, Aretha Franklin, Prince, and Marvin Gaye, giving the costumes a heightened, performance-driven quality instead of a strict historical reproduction. Bill Condon later called her one of the movie's primary storytellers, and the work earned Davis a second Oscar nomination for costume design. It's worth noting that this scope of work, over 100 principal gowns alone, rivals or exceeds the costume count of some multi-season television dramas, compressed into a single production schedule. The dreams look like the dreams specifically because Sharon Davis chose to see them that way. 10. 2 Broadway originals are in the film. 2 people on screen in Dreamgirls aren't just background actors, they're actual veterans of the original 1981 Broadway production, hiding in plain sight. Loretta Devine, later a familiar TV face on shows like Boston Public and Grey's Anatomy, was one of the 3 original Dreamettes on Broadway, originating the role of Laurel Robinson at the Imperial Theater in 1981, the same role Enika Noni Rose plays in the film. Condon brought Devine back for a small, pointed cameo as a jazz singer in a nightclub scene, a deliberate handoff from the original Laurel to the new one. Hinton Battle, a Broadway veteran who served as a summer replacement for James Thunder Early during the original run, plays Curtis Taylor's loyal aide Wayne in the movie. Condon, who attended the show's original December 20th, 1981 opening night, knew exactly what he was doing when he made both casting calls. These weren't accidental overlaps either. Both actors had to be sought out and specifically offered these parts, meaning the connective tissue between stage and screen was planned from very early in pre-production. They're quiet tributes buried inside the cast list, planted for anyone who knew the show's history well enough to notice. 11. A 90s version almost happened. After the Whitney Houston version collapsed, Dreamgirls got a second life in Hollywood, and that attempt nearly reached the screen too. In the late 1990s, following the success of the Tina Turner biopic What's Love Got to Do with It, Warner Brothers, who then controlled the rights, attached Joel Schumacher to direct, fresh off Batman Forever and A Time to Kill. Lauryn Hill, riding the massive success of The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, was set to play Deena, with R&B singer Kelly Price attached as Effie. The whole version collapsed in 1998 after Warner Brothers released the Frankie Lyman biopic Why Do Fools Fall in Love, which flopped at the box office and convinced the studio that music biopics no longer worked commercially. The project was shelved indefinitely, marking the second completely different cast lineup built and abandoned for the same film. It's a pattern worth noticing. 2 entirely separate eras of Hollywood tried and failed to make this exact story work before the right combination of director, cast, and studio appetite finally lined up in the mid-2000s. 2 full casts, 2 full directors, and still not a single frame of footage to show for either attempt. 12. Why Eddie Murphy walked out. When Eddie Murphy lost the Oscar, he left the ceremony before it ended, and for 18 years, the public assumed exactly the wrong reason why. Murphy missed Jennifer Hudson winning Best Supporting Actress for the same film, and he missed all 3 Dreamgirls songs performing in the Best Original Song category. Cameras caught the early exit, and entertainment press immediately framed it as Murphy storming out in anger over the loss. That interpretation stood until early 2026, when Murphy explained what actually happened while promoting his Netflix documentary Being Eddie. He said Clint Eastwood came over and rubbed his shoulder, and other attendees kept patting him in sympathy. Murphy realized that staying meant spending the rest of the night absorbing pity from a room full of people who felt sorry for him, so he left instead. 18 years is a long time for a false narrative to sit unchallenged in the public record, and it only got corrected because Murphy chose to revisit that night decades later. It wasn't a tantrum. By his own account, it was simple self-protection from an uncomfortable spotlight. 13. Diana Ross never watched it. The character of Deena Jones is widely understood to be loosely based on Diana Ross, and Ross herself wanted absolutely nothing to do with the finished film. The story fictionalizes several real events from the Supremes, including the way Florence Ballard was eased out of the group and replaced by Cindy Birdsong in 1967. Audiences and critics in 2006 largely treated the film as a thinly veiled retelling of that real history. 4 months after the film opened and won its Oscars, Ross gave an interview to the Detroit News, stating she had not watched it and had no plans to. She publicly distanced herself from the project, framing it as not her story to tell, after spending decades shaping her own public narrative around her time with the group. That kind of public refusal from the person a character is loosely based on is rare, and it added an extra layer of real-world tension to a film already accused of blurring fact and fiction. The film never got Diana Ross's blessing, and by her own account, it never got her viewing either. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations, and tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. 14. A dedication to a director who never made it. The closing credits of Dreamgirls carry a dedication to a director who never actually got the chance to make the film himself. Michael Bennett directed and choreographed the original 1981 Broadway production, having already won Tony Awards for a chorus line. After Dreamgirls opened and ran for 1,521 performances, Bennett intended to direct a film adaptation himself, holding on to that plan for years. He died on July 30, 1987 at age 44 of AIDS-related lymphoma, before the project could move forward. For the next 19 years, the film rights passed through David Geffen, through the failed Whitney Houston attempt, through the failed Joel Schumacher attempt, and finally landed with Bill Condon in the 2000s. 19 years is longer than some entire acting careers, and it means the film that finally reached theaters in 2006 was shaped by 3 completely different creative visions before Condon's version ever got made. When the film was finally completed in 2006, the credits dedicated it to the one director who started it all, but never lived to see his own version reach a screen. Almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. 15, 8 nominations. No Best Picture. Dreamgirls led the entire field in total nominations at the 79th Academy Awards, and it still walked away without a single Best Picture nod. The film picked up 8 nominations total. Best Supporting Actor for Eddie Murphy, Best Supporting Actress for Jennifer Hudson, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Sound Mixing, and 3 separate nominations for Best Original Song, even though those 3 songs technically split the vote against each other in the same category. Best Picture that year went to 5 different films instead: Babel, The Departed, Letters from Iwo Jima, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Queen, with The Departed ultimately winning. Dreamgirls' exclusion from that lineup, despite leading every other category in nominations, became the most discussed snub of the entire ceremony. The film won only 2 of its 8 nominations, Best Supporting Actress for Hudson and Best Sound Mixing. Leading the field in nominations without a Best Picture nod is a rare enough combination that film historians still cite this exact case when discussing Oscar snubs. A film that dominated almost every technical and performance category still wasn't judged good enough to be called one of the year's 5 best. Bonus. The real Effie died broke at 32 Effie White is fiction, but the woman she's based on was real, and her ending looked nothing like the one Hollywood gave her. Florence Ballard was the founding member and original lead singer of the Supremes, a group that started as a Detroit teenage trio called the Primettes, almost the exact same way the Dreams begin as the Dreamettes in the film. As the group rose to fame, Barry Gordy decided Diana Ross had more crossover appeal with white audiences and gradually pushed Ballard into the background. In July 1967, Motown fired Ballard from the group during a Las Vegas residency, and Cindy Birdsong took her place on stage that very same night, a beat-for-beat match to Effie's firing in the movie. But Ballard's life after the Supremes never contained a triumphant reunion. She battled depression and alcohol abuse, lost a series of solo attempts and unwinnable lawsuits against Motown, and died of cardiac arrest on February 22, 1976, at just 32 years old, broke. The film borrows almost every beat of her downfall, while quietly rewriting the one part of the story that mattered most, the ending she never actually got to live. The happy ending the film gives Effie is a piece of fiction that the real woman never got to live, and those were 15 strange facts about Dreamgirls. This movie matters more than people think, because underneath the sequins and the harmonies is a true story about ambition, betrayal, and who gets remembered. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which facts surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.